All right, so if it's all right with the rest of the guests, I think we can get started, and perhaps some more people will join as we go. But I think we want to try to keep to schedule as much as we can. Uh, Welcome to the Arctica AMA. So as many of you know, there have been some maybe disconnects or struggles in deciding the next steps of the Zero L community. So a small team formed to come up with recommendations that as a community we can vote on later. And the people you see on stage, aside from me, were part of this community, or sorry, this small group. So what we'll do today is we'll have a short intro to what is Team Arctica, what are the recommendations they have put forward, and then you will have some time to ask questions. So you should see the option to have a chat box in the top right corner if you haven't used it before. And then we will have a traditional AMA style where you can write questions in the chat box and we can raise them to the people you see on stage here. So we have Rico, Lex, Daniel, and Alex on stage, and I will just be acting as a sort of host. And maybe I can actually start with my first question for Rico before you get into it. Is it Arctica, or is there a different way that you pronounce it?
I've heard Arctica and I've heard Arctica. Frankly, I don't care. I've called it Arctica, but yeah, whatever.
Okay, and just a small note before we jump into things. This hopefully is being recorded on my second computer. So if you miss something, you should have the chance to watch it on our YouTube channel later. And also something to keep in mind, maybe as you write your comments in the chat box. So if there's nothing else, then Rico, are you willing to give a brief intro to Team Arctica?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Claire. And thanks for setting this up and making all this happen and working with the marketing team on the promo of this. I'm going to start out just because I'm going to start out with a really quick intro to who is Arctica and what was the recommendation that was made. And I just want to make sure everybody on the call is on the same page. I would tend to think that most of you who are here are aware of this information, so I'll keep it short. After we got to a bit of an impasse in the community, particularly in the governance working group sessions, trying to sort out the exact details to implement the votes from last October, there was a perception by a number of us that the issue had a lot of subtlety and hidden complexity that seemed to be really a struggle for the group. And so we convened a small group, a temporary entity. That's why it has a goofy name, a temporary entity that we called Team Arctica, and we sought out people who had deep knowledge of this project, who also had experience with other blockchain projects, and who were willing to work with us to come up with a recommendation we could make to the community. And it is that, it's just a recommendation for the community to now decide whether it wants to adopt or reject. So we're basically a group of advisors, if you will. That team was comprised of the four you see here on the call: Rico Fine, myself, Lex, Daniel, and Alex T. Additionally, Wade, who many of you know is active in our validator set, was part of the group. And so was Odie, and so was Zucky Manian. So there was 7 people, or whatever the math is on that, on the team. And we set a goal of trying to work this out within a couple of weeks. It took us a little bit longer, but that's who the team is. Those of you who've been in the blockchain space for a while, you certainly know that persons like Zucky and Lex draw a lot of water in the blockchain world. They've done a lot of really great, really credible work. Alex T, if you don't know Alex, Alex is a well-known economist who's been advising on projects, including ours, since the early days. Knows quite a bit about tokenomics, has a philosophical alignment with the project, and has been with the project from the beginning. He actually predates myself and Daniel and Wade. I think that probably Lex and Odie and Alex and Zucky are probably all of the same Genesis cohort. The rest of us are not. So that's who the group is. That's why we put the group together. And what did we come up with for a recommendation for the community? Well, the lightweight version goes like this. Number 1, stop inflation. Number 2, provide for validator incentives going forward by creating the infrastructure escrow fund. Number 3, fund the infrastructure escrow fund through a dilution of the validator set, and the recommended amount was 80%. There are a couple of other little details in there relating to dispersing a couple of community wallets first. But that is, in simplest terms, what we're talking about. We're talking about stopping inflation, rebasing to 10 billion, and decreasing the validators' holdings by 80%, all of which goes directly into the infrastructure escrow fund. The infrastructure escrow fund in the future will provide validator incentives, and to the extent that the actual incentives paid per epoch are less than the projected incentives, the difference goes into the community wallets to keep the community wallets topped up. So it's the same mechanism we have now for sharing those epoch rewards with the community wallets, though the mechanism works a little differently. So, in a nutshell, that's what we're here to talk about today. And I know there's been a lot of discussion about, oh, well, maybe we should do it in fashion X, or maybe we should do it in fashion Y. But the reason why we took this path of saying, let's make a recommendation that the community can say yes or no to, was to try to avoid us bogging down in those discussions. And I do want us to keep thinking about that being the goalposts here. I'm not saying other alternatives are off the table. If everybody votes, if a majority votes no on this and the recommendation is not endorsed, well, then other ideas are going to have to be discussed. But I'm going to stop there. I'm going to say welcome to Wade, who is also part of Team Arctica. And then I'm going to hand it over to Daniel to talk about the methodology of Team Arctica, and then we'll start getting into the nuts and bolts. But we wanted to give everybody some context to make sure everybody's on the same page before we did that. So I'm going on mute. Daniel, over to you.
Great. Yeah, hello everyone. It's really great to be here again. It's been a while that we didn't have a stage on Discord, so really glad to be here with you all. The first thing, so there are two things that I want to share here from the Arctica team, and one is that so we came up with a set of principles at the beginning, and then we followed that with two research that by those research, we came up with the current recommendation. But first, I want to start with the set of principles that we came up with. Keep in mind that these principles, they are more than one page. So I'm going to give a short description of them here. So starting with the first principle, we are here to make better capital, and we believe that there is a big opportunity. Being the most loved token, by being the most honest product, is a far broader commercial opportunity than merely offering a technology infrastructure solution. And then we also believe that to be the most honest product, being righteousness is not an end goal. It is the necessary condition to create a customer-centric token. The second principle is to provide the spaces that attract sensible entrepreneurs to thrive. First point in here is capital. At a minimum, entrepreneurs need capital, for example, humans and money. If we collect the resources the builders need, they will come to us. The second point in this principle is about labor flywheel. We believe all capital comes from labor. Collect the entrepreneurs and the capital emerges, and so the flywheel between capital and entrepreneurs begins. The third principle we came up with is that we are here to play the long game. We believe that there is a unique opportunity. We exist because a corporate entity invested hundreds of millions of dollars in a technology that few people could fly. So leveraging that sunk cost allows us to play the long game here. And without the pressure brought on by the outside capital, such as venture capitals. Another point is that there is always time. So when our time horizon are over a long period, then it is easier to justify doing the right thing. Another point would be that we try to be multi-generational. So when we think of community, it is not merely the currently active players. It is everyone who came before and everyone that will come after. And I will end the list of principles in here, but as I said before, there is a longer list that hopefully we can publish soon in our explanatory article, and that you can read all these principles. And so we use these principles to go to the next next phase of our work, and that was starting to research and survey. The first survey that we've done was to that we asked our past, current workers in the community. We asked about how much time that they've worked on OL. We asked about their hourly rates, and we asked how much coin they have in their position at the moment, and we asked if they can provide some names that we can confirm if the numbers that they've provided are correct. We use this research to calculate, for example, how much costs have been incurred by workers in the community. And then the second research that was done was to find out what's the cost for validators to run infrastructure and have some profits, have a positive net at the end of their work. So with the help of these two research, we came up with the numbers that Rick already mentioned to you, and we use this to calculate and have some data points to make sure that at least the numbers that we present are not just how we feel, but at least based on some data that we can gather. I'm gonna stop here and see if I missed something. Rick, let me know. Otherwise, we can move to the next section.
Yeah, there is one thing that we should also mention there, Daniel. When we looked at those initial principles, we agreed that we thought that the sweet spot for having sufficient capital for the sustainability of the project across time was somewhere between 50 and 80%. By the time we finished that research that Daniel just went through, and of course, kind of built a model based upon different market caps for the project, the conclusion that we reached was we would only be able to really reach 70%. So 80 was the ideal. We could only reach 70. That means 70% is locked away for future growth and ecosystem development. 30% is currently held by the rest of the community and individual workers and validators. The math just didn't sustain the 80%. I was really hoping we were going to get to that, but it would have made this even more brutal. So the conclusion was 70% based on that research. That's all I had to say.
Rick, can I jump in here as I may have to drop off? This is Alex
Please.
D. So what I want to emphasize is that this is really about survival. You know, in the Gordon cycle, we're obviously past the peak of inflated expectations. That was 2021, and we're into the trough of disillusionment, and we've got to make it right through the upswing of enlightenment, and that's going to take some time. And we don't know how long that's going to take. It could be years before crypto comes back. We don't know how long that's going to take. So we need to have a reserve. And when I say this is about survival, one of the things which came up with Team Arctika was just shutting the project down, right? That, you know, there are people who've put in a lot of labor, and we have to convince, you know, them that it's worthwhile to continue. And this plan was, after lots of discussions among the team, was the best, and I think one of the few things which came up as a potentially successful way forward. So I do think that we are at a cusp point. I don't think that there are very many alternatives. So I do think, as I said, that we got to think about this as a moment of survival, that this is one of the few ways forward. We are in a difficult situation. it could take years before crypto comes back. So we really need to make big moves and make big moves now in order to secure survival for the future.
Agreed. You know, Alex actually raises something that I was going to say from, you know, do appreciate that when the team was going through various scenarios and various alternatives, we looked at a lot of stuff. That's part of the reason why it took so long for this to come out. There were discussions about, you know, completely resetting the network. There were discussions about decreasing the size of the total issuance instead of increasing it upwards. There were various methodologies of making everyone get a haircut. I mean, we really went through a lot of scenarios before we landed on this. And this one not only ticked the boxes mathematically, which is most important, but it was elegantly simple. People are going to be unhappy with this no matter which way we land it. That to me shouldn't be our driver here. Our driver should be what's our best chance for long-term sustainability. And frankly, I'd prefer to have 20% of something that's worth something than 100% of something that's worth nothing. Okay, let's go ahead and if anyone has anything else they want to say right now, great. Otherwise, I wanted to get to the next point on the agenda, and then we can get to the actual AMA, because I know people have questions.
Yeah, Rico, I'll add a little bit of color. I don't know if the explanations or the messaging is anywhere else, and in particular, that's to address how people understand what community wallets are. So let me pause. Is now a reasonable time to bring this up, or do you want?
Perfect. That's perfect. Go for it.
Right. Okay. So I think there's been a ton of kind of fog about the community wallet concept, and in part, I was a person who did not understand the community wallet concept. And not until kind of engaging through the smaller group did it become a bit more clear to me. So, you know, it is a special feature of OL, and I think it's a feature that looks different than the design choices of other networks. Whether or not it's good or bad is a different conversation, but it is very differentiated. And I think that's really interesting because differentiation is good and we can design around it. So whereas other chains really have like the token state of being in somebody's wallet and then the token state of being burnt, which is just being in some other address, we at OL have multiple token states. So, you know, it can be in your wallet, but then your wallet can be slow, i.e. it can have vesting imposed on it, which affects fully diluted supply. Then, of course, you can burn a token, but then if you send a token to a community wallet, that's not the same thing as sending it to some person who is now has that money. That is not what a community wallet is. Rather, a community wallet is like a trust on behalf of a chain with a responsibility to invest in the future of the chain. So when you look at the table that was shared in the governance channel, and you'll see sort of people saying, well, 70% is going to the future. That 70% is capital in community wallets meant to be spent on chain development, plus capital in the infrastructure escrow fund meant to be spent on validator subsidy. And there are mechanisms that are being developed. Some have been deployed, some have not, to have multi-sig control of community wallets and ability to, you know, freeze out capital if it's not being spent well, potentially pull back capital to the source from where it was sent. So the community wallets are not some, you know, third-party beneficiary. It is the chain's capital, which is meant to be spent on future initiatives. And I think there are things to say about how to design that so that the community literally has much more active control over that capital. But we should not confuse that destination, you know, as if it were some private enterprise. It is our capital. It is for future chain investment, and we're not competing with community wallets for capital, because it is in effect like a reserve that we would all together spend on building out the chain. So I think for me, that was a piece that was missing in understanding what it would, whether or not those should exist, and how they should participate in the equation.
And for those of you that are sitting out there listening to this going, yeah, but that's not the way it's worked, you need to keep in mind that one of the proposals that passed in October changes the governance of community wallets going forward. And that's going to be what Lex has just described, the way that community wallets are managed going forward once we get through this upgrade. In other words, community wallets will now be forced to use a multi-sig, and there's restrictions on who can be multi-sig holders. So we take it out of being controlled by a single individual. Second, the donors to community wallets will have the ability to freeze community wallets that are not performing properly. And there's even the possibility, though it would require a bit more coding, that we could implement a removal of funds from frozen wallets that don't meet certain conditions. So the governance of community wallets is about to increase significantly. And this, I think, obviates some of the fears and concerns that I've seen expressed in the chat in the governance working group. So that was something we had in mind as we were designing. Excuse me. Okay, I have two other things I wanted to respond to, and I'm responding to things that were in the governance working group chat that I saw come up a couple of times that I thought were really easy to eliminate. One of them is a couple of people have said, hey, what's to stop this from happening again? And the answer is nothing. This is a community-driven project. If the community votes for it and puts sufficient governance around it and gets the protocol to accept the changes, well, that's the way the future is. That's something that's a given. We all walked into this game. We all knew this from the beginning. Do I think that it's going to happen again? I have no idea, but I would hope that if we design intelligently now, there wouldn't be a push for that to occur. But again, it's a community-driven project. If you don't like the way it's going, get involved. Your vote is as large as my vote. There is no quadratic voting here. And then the last point, and I think this is the one that's pushed a lot of people's buttons, and it's kind of pushed mine too, frankly. And that's this whole discussion about, are we punishing validators? Have validators done something wrong? And, first off, everyone on this stage, or everyone in Team Arctika, has been a validator at one time. And at least 3 of us are currently validators right now. So we're all taking this hit right there with you guys, okay? We don't have a special leg up on equity on anybody here. So we're all in this together. That's the first point. Second, some of the writings that you may have seen or some of the statements you may have seen out of some of the Team Arctika members reflect what their motivations are in part, okay? But it doesn't reflect the group as a whole. The group as a whole is of the opinion that this is about good economics, that this is about good design, that this is about positioning us for success in the future. It's not about punishing anybody. Don't hate the players, hate the game, right? If we design a game that could be played, you can't get pissed at people for playing it. It's just not right. And so, it may be unfortunate, it may not be ideal, but it isn't something that requires punitive action. This is all about good economic design, period. And I'm just going to stop there, because anything more than that just starts getting emotional and weird. And the fundamentals is we're trying to design for the future. So Claire, do you want to open up the AMA, or does somebody else here have anything else to say and I can shut up for a while?
I think we can give a moment to see if Lex, Wade, Alex, or Danielle has anything they want to add. We don't have too many questions quite yet, so if you have anything you want to raise, now is the time.
I just thought Rick said that beautifully. I agree 100%. This is about the future. It's about making us stable for the future, about building for the future. It's not about punishment. It's not about the past. It's all about creating a platform which we think can grow.
You've been awfully quiet, Wade. You want to jump in, buddy?
Yeah, no, I fully agree with everything that's being said. as particularly Rick's last point, I guess anything that I've said or others have said from Team Arctica is just in the chat is purely like our personal opinions, and yeah, that's kind of all from me.
All right, thank you, Wade. Lex, go ahead.
Oh no, I
Or-
just jumped
Oh,
off mute real quick to say that Zucky's traveling today and not able to join us, and Odie is coding today, so that's why he is not here. So that explains where our other two members are.
Okay, thank you, Rico. So I think I can already jump. We have some questions in the chat box. The first one is from Ian, who asks, is anything going to happen to the Carpe miners tokens?
Gigantic, no, nothing. Carpe miners are going to see no dilution in their value.
Excellent. And I can ask my own question, maybe. So if this proposal is adopted, what does it mean for the day-to-day user? Does anything change for them in how they work with the platform and what happens in the community? So people that are not validators, but maybe just people that are mining or just hanging out in the Discord because they are interested.
Somebody else jump in and grab this. I shouldn't be doing all the talking here.
Yeah, I think the first thing that will happen is that the community should see a more reliable and a stable chain. So the transactions should go way faster. So that should be the first thing that they're going to notice. And for the so we are also thinking about the future of Carpe, and well, that's something that could change. I'm not sure which stage we are in the development with that, but that's something that needs to be decided yet. As for validators, well, there are a couple of changes, especially proof of fee and musical chair that we are going to implement. So, but as a whole for the community, I think with the new upgrades, we are going to able to run smart contracts on our chain very easily. We can grab all the basically the dApps from other chains, move chains, and bring them way easier to our own chain and use all the capital that they are using in here as well.
Thank you, Daniel. I think that was quite clear for me to understand, at least. And I can move on to our next question from Michael, who asks, why do we provision for a finite number of years? Wouldn't it be beautiful to provision for an infinite number of years by including a halving mechanism for the validator subsidy?
So I'll speak a little bit to that. I mean, the validators have to be paid in real terms. They have a opportunity cost of the compute time and the electricity and the labor of running validation on other chains. So we can't count on the value of the coin going up so much that we could provision for an infinite number of years. We are keeping our fingers crossed that the chain will grow enough in value so that the validators see that current coins are worth something or will be worth something, and so they're willing to validate for coins today. But even that is uncertain. So this is the best plan for moving forward, but nothing ensures survival. But we think we can do 7 years. We think that's a biblical number, right? 7 lean years, 7 fat years. So that's where we're going with that. It's not possible to do it for an infinite number of years.
Hey, I'll just jump in there. If I can read Alex's mind for a sec, I think Alex is saying, why don't we employ an alternative methodology that halves validator rewards across time and would thereby provide an ongoing stream of validator income that could extend beyond 7 years? And Alex, of course, shoot me down if I blew that bit terribly.
Well, I think that was the question, but and the reason why we can't do that is we can't we can't be confident that the coin will increase in value enough so that that provides a consistent return to the validators.
I'll jump in here. I think, again, what you have here is a group of advisors with a point of view, not a group of people designing the mechanism. So if there's a desire to design a mechanism, the community can propose a design and vote for it and so on, and implement it. So you're getting opinion. The default in a lot of blockchain protocol thinking is you've got kind of a log-looking curve that trails rewards out, and you earn a bunch of rewards up front, and then the rewards go away. But if the network is more valuable, then the smaller rewards are more valuable. And what Alex is pointing out is that even though that's market, there is a built-in assumption in there. And the built-in assumption is that the network value will increase, and it's sort of relying on a capital markets appreciation story. And one of the principles of this chain is to try and not rely on financial games in order to build out the community and build out the network and build out the tech. That may happen, and it might be fantastic. And we think that, in fact, if done right, i.e. by not relying just on financial games, then there will be more value to this project than to another, to like a meme coin on Ethereum right now. But so if you take that principle all the way through, then you try to model out costs without assuming capital markets appreciation. But obviously there's just opinion, and we don't control or design for how the capital markets will behave. If you look at other chains outside of, yes, Bitcoin has that curve, and that basically is its killer feature. But other protocols like Ethereum, for example, have, as they've reached different scales, right? So once Ethereum became multiple hundreds of billions of dollars worth of value, they had the reward mechanisms were adjusted for that particular scale. So inflation, deflation on Ethereum at really large scale has very different kind of inflation assumptions than it did in its early days. And so I think kind of the natural answer is we need to take a reasonable shot at the foreseeable future, which is for the long term, but not for kind of the nonsense long term that we can't control. And we think this is a reasonable shot at subsidizing costs for the foreseeable future. And of course, if things change, then we adjust and we think about it as the circumstances demand then.
Yeah, I agree with what Lex said.
And there is a quick follow-up question. So is the assumption that we have a new mechanism for validator rewards funding after the 7 years is over? Maybe not so quick of a question.
I mean, the team was focused on, survival for the next few months, not what happens in 7 years. If we get there, then the team will have been successful. So as Lex said, things can change. But right now, right now we're focusing on survival.
Yeah, I mean, I believe the math holds steady 100 million market cap and funds out of that the validator in escrow. And so if you have a flex in the market cap of the protocol, maybe maybe the reward doesn't stay fixed. So I think, again, we're trying to go from 0 to 1 rather than from 10 to 100. And I think the question about what exactly it's going to look like, and is the supply final, and like fungibility and all that, these are totally fantastic and appropriate questions. And I think some of those questions are in comparison to other protocols. Whereas if you really think about the mechanisms of this protocol, they are a bit different. And I think in their difference, there is the advantage, so the differences are you've got the auction for validators. That's how it works rather than through having a supply curve that goes out to infinity asymptotically. So the auction is there so that we can attract validators, and that's obviously been funky in the current state of the technology. But with V7, we believe that the technology will be more stable and supportable and inclusive, and so the auction remains that mechanism. And then, given the fog of war that is ahead of us, we think, what's a reasonable amount for allocation into the future? The reasonable amount for allocation into the future is 70% of our resources. So if you think about, when you're building a startup, you might be thinking in funding rounds, 20% for this investor, 20% for this investor. Whereas here, the game is kind of thinking about the destination cap table, which is at the very end of everybody having gotten funded somehow. So the 70%, which is allocated, is to try and cover as much of that future growth as possible. I think getting to an extremely precise number in this exercise will give people the false confidence of precision, where the precision, is deceiving. You're not going to get a better outcome by adding 50 decimal points to the number here. Rather, I think are the principles appropriate? Is this an equilibrium that we feel will get us, again, from 0 to 1? And if so, how do we move forward as fast as possible?
Thank you, Lex. I think that was really helpful for understanding this and gave a lot of insight into the thinking behind why this proposal is the way it is. So for the next question, what happens with the token unlock from the validators, and how will the circulating supply of 0L be affected? I think we touched on this a bit already.
Yeah, no, this is a good question. The bottom line is that the token unlock parameters, and there's two. One is the time of the total unlock, and the second is the daily withdrawal limits. Those are both parameters that are controlled by community governance. So the answer is, what happens with them? Well, whatever the community wants to happen with them. What they're currently set at. If we need to make changes to that, well, somebody put up a proposal. Let's discuss it and govern this. Over.
Yeah, I think that brings up something really important. This isn't meant to be a huge proposal that solves every single decision for the next 7 years. It's just a next step, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. There's plenty of open issues that we as a community face going forward. I mean, when we talk about what are we going to do beyond 7 years? Well, that's assuming that the rewards only last 7 years. Well, that 7-year figure comes from some calculations we did based on the average validator earnings from the research that Daniel measured, and then some assumptions about what market cap is, right? So we knew what the value of the coin was. Bottom line is that was done at a market cap of 100 million. So if you want the rewards to last more than 7 years, I'm going to put on my community cheerleader hat and say, get out there and build. Make the market cap worth more than 100 million, and we'll have more than 7 years runway here. It's that simple. We tried to be conservative about it, but I think if you look at our peers, you'll see that we certainly have the possibility of exceeding that number if we get our act together and start to, number one, have a chain we can build on, and number two, start building.
All right, thank you, Rico. And the next question is a bit broad, but it's asking for what are the high-level objectives of this plan, looking out for example, in the next 6, 9, or 12 months. So what are the clear next steps that you're thinking of?
The scope of Team Arctica was to come up with recommendations for the parameters for these proposals. It was not to take on the strategy for the entire project, right? This is a narrower in scope exercise. The question that's being asked right now is a totally valid question, We should have a roadmap. We should be able to answer that as a community, but let's push that off on the governance working group. And those of you who are interested in such things, start coming to the governance working group, and let's figure that out.
Okay, and I see the person that asked this question. I think it's Ulu. Apologies for the pronunciation, but you raised your hand to speak. If you do want to clarify your question, if possible, I'd ask you to type it in the chat. I think that will keep things running a bit more smoothly. But we definitely want to hear what you have to say. All right, I think these other questions have been addressed. Michael has
Can I jump
stated
in?
that, oh, yes, please go ahead.
All right, I was just, while you were looking at that, I was just going to add a little bit more to that last answer. From a personal perspective, what should we be doing in the immediate future? Number one is getting the V7 code tested, get it deployed to testnet, and get it live. Job number one, right? Number two, and marketing and comms has already started to open these discussions, that is start to build out a cogent developer relations outreach program, right? We need to, once we are in a position where we've got a compatible buildable chain, we need to start reaching out, spearfishing devs from other projects, making them aware they have options here and why they want to build here. So all that marketing messaging, all that supporting documentation, whatever we need on developer tooling, we need to focus on that to make this a place that will attract builders along with attractive tokenomics, because this is attractive tokenomics is simply one piece of the puzzle, right? And then I think the third thing that we need to get our act together on is we need to get the changes in the community wallet structure actually implemented. So forcing all of our community wallet holders to shift to multi-sig, making them aware of what the new rules are, educating the donors so that they know they have a check and balance that they can apply for these community wallets that are just sitting there on their funds and doing nothing. So that to me is the important next steps, but that's personal opinion. That's not Team Arctika opinion.
Does anyone else on the stage have something they want to add to this? Okay, so I think we've reached the end of the questions in the chat for now. Maybe I can ask a question that I think I've seen in some of the channels. Do you think that this may lead to validators being disincentivized as a result of the distribution?
I'm a validator. I'm going to keep operating.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, same.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. Are there any other questions that people, oh, go ahead.
Hey, Claire, sorry. I know that seemed a little flippant, and I should step
No.
in. I think the point I was trying to make is that's going to be a personal decision. Does the math work for you, right? And we tried to take a best guess based on that research of professional validator operations, and also talking to some of our people, and of course what all of us on Team Arctika know from doing it ourselves. So it's going to be a personal decision is the point.
Okay, and I think that's fair. It really does come down to what you're willing to do at the end of the day, and whether you align with the community values that I think are trying to be shown through this proposal and these recommendations. And if there's no more questions, I think most of my questions have been raised as well. Should we move on to what's next?
Sure.
Yeah, so
no, sorry, go ahead.
sorry, Claire. Yeah, so something else that we need to consider is that, so what's next for us? And that would be the voting process. So we have so far two options that we considered, and there is one that has been built by one of our community members, which is an on-chain voting mechanism. You can send a transaction, and that's going to be counted as a yes or no. The other solution would be to set up a Discord voting process, voting poll, which we know that there is one bot that we can use. We've tested on our testing server, which also provides the Sybil resistant mechanism, so we can at least have some guarantee, that some certainty at least, not really much, but yeah, we can be sure that at least there is a little bit of anti-Sybil resistant to it. The bots can work for a couple of days. We can, for example, set it up to set the voting process for 48 hours or 7 days, for example, and then it will close, and it's very easy to use. So that's something that we still need to fine-tune and figure out, but for us, the next step would be that.
Yeah, just to jump in on that, we apologize for not getting answers to the voting mechanism today. We were hoping to get it, but the governance working group didn't meet this week. So Daniel mostly, and with some help from some other people, in trying to stitch something together. We also have an explanatory document that Team Arctika put together, and the reviewers have been beating it up, and we've been trying to get that into shape. We hope to release it before this session, but we weren't there yet. So we're going to get that document out to the community in advance of the vote. So expect that document to be posted, I don't know, maybe Monday morning or Sunday, depending on how productive we all are over the weekend. And then the vote will certainly follow very closely thereafter. Daniel and I earlier were kicking around the idea of starting the vote on Wednesday and running it for 48 hours. So stay tuned. We will shout this loud and clearly within Discord once we land all this stuff. But we've just had problems getting a few people together to take decisions on this. Over.
And so the idea for this vote, just to be clear, is that it's either we accept these proposals or we don't. There is not an additional option, correct? At least as of now.
That is what the governance working group had said. I know there are some people who have been discussing alternatives. I frankly like keeping this binary, and then if the answer is we reject it, well, then the community can figure out how to go forward from there. We're definitely disbanding Team Arctika. It's been really amazing that we've been able to get the time of people like Zucky and Alex and Lex. And I don't think we can get any more from them right now. And I think the community then, if they don't like this recommendation, the community needs to staff up and figure this out. So yeah, I'm in favor of being a yes, no, or endorse, reject vote.
Okay, excellent, Rico. And maybe I can just ask, is there one final thing that, if you had to say one last thing about this proposal, what would you state? Is there something that you want to share with the community or really have them understand? And this can be maybe to everyone on stage here.
Okay, someone other than me start, please.
You know, from me, I'm still here because I'm pretty excited about this project. It is distinctive in a sea of sameness, of layer 2 wars and grant NFT project bribing and all sorts of nonsense. So I think its differentiation is here. And for me, I just want to see a functional network delivering what it can and what it already has. And I think we already have some pretty profound differentiated features. I think even just our payments mechanisms, from having vesting, having embedded on-chain multi-sigs, is very differentiated, in addition to the fact that this is like a bootstrap community, that it is a community of people that are choosing to build things together. And when you do that, it's hard. Lots of things break, and then that creates cost, and it creates it creates effort for everybody, and it's work that everybody has to do. And so then you start to figure out why and who and how much and all this stuff. That said, I think we're all very early to this project. Like if you're in the audience or in the stage or anywhere in this Discord, you've discovered a project with a lot of promise in formation stages and kind of its growth pains. So, for me, I think there's option value here. It's either zero or it's something. And I want to see the next generation of this tech come out. I want to see, like a healthy security infrastructure, and I want to see the development and porting of applications. And so, just getting us unblocked, I think, is really important. And figuring out how to work through conflict and have mechanisms that do that is also really important. And so, I think whether or not this vote passes, I'm just having gone through this process kind of more encouraged about how things are coming together.
Thank you, Lex. I think that was really nicely said, and you're getting definitely some support in the chat. Wade, you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's been pretty amazing to see like the responses from everybody and like the differing opinions. I think that adds to everything that we're doing here. I like when I've been involved in the different projects in the industry and something like that. I'm somewhat starting to get a bit disheartened with exactly kind of what Lex is saying. There's multiple scams, everything else, and this is the project that gives me the most hope from like an ideological perspective, and just that the amount of work that's already been done without seeing any price or anything like that, and it's like a beacon. It's attracting the right type of people, the right type of conversations, and so I'm very excited. And if this like the recommendation goes forward or not, I don't think it matters. I think the ability to have a recommendation, and then if that doesn't pass, to iterate on that, I think is a very good thing. So I'm really excited.
I'm going to jump in after that and say, first off, I absolutely agree with the optimism Lex and Wade have and the attitude toward the project. I'm right there with you. But I'm going to add one more thing to that, which is I spend a lot of time in a highly regulated space and a lot of time talking with legal counsel and advisors around regulatory issues and how we think things are going to play out. And there's a consistent theme that comes up with the regulators, which is attributes of decentralization. Does the project display attributes of decentralization, and are they sufficient for us to conclude that it's a truly decentralized project? Hence, something like Bitcoin has been outside of the regulatory purview. That's the space we want to occupy. That's where we need to go. And the things we've done up to this point are consistent with that, and it puts us in a very, very attractive position. Moreover, the fact that we don't have promotes VC control or whale control of the project is huge. It gives us a big differentiator in this space. So we've got all that stuff right. Now we need functional tech, and we're blocked on this because of this matter. I want to see us get past that. I want to see version 7 in the wild. I want to see this flywheel start to kick in and people figure out that, oh, this is the interesting place where they should be building. And this project's going to be a blast. And that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Rico. And Danielle, did you have something you wanted to add?
Honestly, I think everything has been said so well that if anything I add would just spoil it. So yeah, I totally agree with everyone.
Okay, well, I think we can bring things to a close then for now. So if you have not read the recommendation, Rico linked it in the announcements channel, so you can find it there. If you want to join the discussion, there's a lot of chatter going on in the governance working group chat. So you can see what people have been saying there. And if you want to add your own voice, of course, it's always welcome. And we look forward to seeing what the next steps are, when the vote will happen and how that vote will take place. And if there is nothing else that we want to add, I think I can close the stage.
How about great job, Claire?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
No,
Thanks.
thank you for bringing your brains here. It was really great to hear what you had to say and to get a better understanding of the work that you have been doing.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
All right, thank you all, and thank you to the audience as well. Have a great weekend.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
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 Bye.